Good evening, folks. This is Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, bringing you a grand solar minimum update on Tuesday, January 23rd, around 10 p.m. Mountain Time, 2018. You're looking at Mayon volcano, and 12 hours ago, there was major lava fountaining in a volcanic eruptive event, the largest to date. This is coming after the large 23,000 foot near stratospheric ash eruption yesterday. So today, massive amounts of lava being ejected out of the volcano at Mayon. We have lots of footage. You'll get links to all of it. A lot of you, I'm sure, have seen it. Let's get to the update. Grand Island sets the record for January 22nd snowfall. People were digging out from the storm. This is Storm Jackson with an X. The National Weather Service in Hastings reported the Grand Island received a record snowfall of 7.4 inches. The previous snowfall record was 3 inches in 1915, going back to the centennial minimum. New York Guardsmen prepare for flooding. East Coast. Jackson comes through. Temperature warms up. We called this ice jamming this week. Major flooding all the way up to Boston. 129 New York National Guardsmen soldiers and airmen are on active duty in case rains and warmer weather cause ice jams and flooding on rivers in upstate northern New York. That's a heads up. Look at the state of the river. You'll get links to everything. Cold, wet outlook for early spring. This is above normal precipitation in the form of snow in the upper half of the United States, which is where you would expect it during a grand solar minimum. Look at how warm and dry it is on the coast here in Alaska, like the last glaciation. So this area is going to start to build snow rapidly through March. And this is coming from NOAA. Extreme cold to persist in Kazakhstan on Tuesday. Not the only place freezing cold and setting records. The latest from Italy, avalanche danger prompts evacuations. Italian authorities say 150 people were ferried by helicopter from a high valley in northern Italy because of severe avalanche risk. We called this a week ago, and that's a boom. Massive Swiss snowfall levels buck the trend of global warming. This week, the Swiss resort towns of Andermatt and Zermatt and Davos have all been record or near record snow levels, but it's an outlier in a years-long trend of declining snowfall totals. Are they kidding me? Boom! What? But on the whole, snowfall levels in all three resorts have been on the decline. Record levels on the decline. This is oxymoron sandwiches. Here are sanitary workers in extreme cold in northeast China yesterday. There's extreme cold in Seoul. An extreme cold wave hit South Korea on Tuesday with lows of minus 13 C, minus 6 in Daegu, and minus 2 in Baosun. Daytime highs ranging from minus 9 to 0 are expected. There's a lot of polyester knit stuff going on there. And that is boom. Sorry, Korea. Flood of the century fears rise in Paris along with the Seine River. Here's a police boat. Is this the dreaded flood of the century? An onslaught of constant cosmic ray flux in Paris' fabled Seine River has flooded again on Tuesday. The water level reached 4.9 meters, about 16 feet, is expected to peak just over 6 meters Saturday. That's days out. For the moment, City Hall is not anticipating full-fledged crisis, but they've shut everything down on that bridge. Apparently, impending catastrophe has been a concern since January of 1910. This 1905, 1910, what happened back then? What was going on? Can someone help me? Oh, it was the centennial minimum during cycle 14, which is very similar to cycle 24, which is exactly where we are today, in the eddy minimum. Oh my God. Man, this channel is awesome. I love this channel, man. It's like history repeats itself. This photo was taken January 27th, 1910. Shows people in the Alma Bridge in Paris as the statue of the soldier was partially submerged. There's the soldier. And in the next 4 days, the river will be coming up. Tsunami warnings put Alaska, western U.S. on edge after the powerful quake overnight. The tsunami waves, obviously, this was a strike-slip movement after geologic analysis has come in the massive, very massive scale, almost approaching 8.0. Now, there are no injuries being reported from this quake, which was very far offshore from Kodiak, Alaska. And this is not a drill. There were actually tsunami warnings, and these people actually got out, which is a good thing because their prior proper planning saved the buttocks. Let's talk about Indonesia. Strong earthquake sets buildings swaying over there. People are concerned. A moderately strong earthquake that we talked about on the early report struck the Indonesian island of Java on Tuesday, damaging buildings near the epicenter and shaking office buildings in the country's capital. Now let's talk about Coffs Coast. This is on the east coast of Australia, near Coffs Harbour, where there's a big banana. There's a flurry of earthquakes being reported by this news source. Coffs Harbour has been rocked by a magnitude 4.2 earthquake. Geosciences Australia reported the earthquake at 13:28 p.m. today. North South Wales incident says there's no tsunami warning. However, there's also no U.S. warning. The USGS is not recording any earthquakes for the last 7 days above 2.5 in Australia at all. The Australian government must have their seismic charts shut off. They don't want the U.S. to know what's going on there. We'll get back to that. Bigger earthquakes could hit Coffs Coast is what these geologists are saying. After 15 shook Dorrigo and Bellingen in the last few days, Geosciences Australia seismologist Hugh Glanville said earthquakes in this region were rare. And I agree with him. It's pretty unusual to see all these red dots on a map. Especially in Australia. That. Oh my God, did it just get real? Coming from Geosciences Australia, we've been receiving hashtag earthquake felt reports from Port Macquarie. I wonder if they're real or they're just hashtag earthquake felt reports. So this is a weird thing happening here. And they're predicting there could be a big boom here. Mr. Glanville said 3+ magnitude earthquakes could be felt 50 kilometers away and lasting for up to 10 seconds. He said earthquakes were not unusual in New South Wales, between 100 and 200 reported each year. So maybe they're just fear-mongering a little bit, or they're waiting for something to happen. Let's get to the real update. Here's the huge quake. There's been over 100 aftershocks since we did the early update. It is a flurry of activity, which is exactly what we would be looking for geologically speaking. Some lateral transverse activity. But the main cluster here, we have some aftershocks in the 5 range of 5.3 here, and this is looking like 5.0. Yes, plus 100 others above 2.5 from this quake, which was a strike slip, meaning this piece and this piece went left and right as opposed to up and down. If there was up and down, they would form a flexure in the ocean surface, causing a standing wave to propagate. Instead, there was just a little swirl and then just a little ripple. Thankfully. Now, KP has been at 0 for hours. There's human health risks involved with that, and there's also lithospheric flexure issues. So we could be looking for another major quake happening in the next few hours. We've already had the 6.0 in Indonesia, rattling people. They're saying there could be a quake here in New South Wales. And we have the aftershocks associated with here. Let's get on with the update. Deadly volcano eruption in Japan confounds forecasters. This is total BS. 1 was killed, 11 hurt, the current numbers, we showed you 2 to 5 ton boulders falling onto the ski resort. It was epic. The volcano in central Japan ski country erupted without warning Tuesday. That's kind of true, but there's warnings. This volcano has been erupting for decades. We'll get to the data. You know, they should never have put a ski resort on an active volcano. I thought we were going to die, said a 28-year-old woman. Yes, well, when 3 to 5 ton boulders are falling out of the sky, everyone thinks they're going to die. Now, the site of Tuesday's blast last erupted 3,000 years ago. Caught off guard. Hello? I'll leave you links to that BS. Here's the info from volcano discovery of Kusatsu-Shirane San volcano. Still listed at 2 out of 5, although it's now listed as 3 after people were killed and huge boulders rained out of the sky. Here is the volcanic history of Kusatsu-Shirane. The Dalton minimum, it erupted. 1805. Guys, you should do a quick Google search on volcanoes that erupted in 1805 because they're all going off. Everyone should do it. And wait till you see the nonsense that the mainstream scientists are saying about the activity happening on Earth now. And we're about to get to it. So it erupted for a long period of time during the centennial minimum, with over 5 eruptions in the Dalton minimum throughout the 1930s. Recently, when St. Helens erupted in the 80s, it was active, as well as 89. So this volcano hasn't been inactive for 3,000 years. Total nonsense. It's been very active and cosmic ray active. So it's been active during high cosmic ray flux period on Earth. 1805 during the Dalton minimum. In the 1930s and the 1900s during this high cosmic ray flux period. Cycle 12, 14, and 16, high cosmic ray flux periods. Look how low the dips go here. And the activity of the volcano was high during the centennial minimum, during the Dalton minimum, and starting in the 80s and continuing today. So this volcano is historically been erupting recently. At least 56,217 people evacuated around Mayon in the Philippines. We've been covering this volcano. And the lava display we showed you at the beginning of the video is the biggest yet as alert levels rise. This has been an uptick ongoing 4 days. It's getting worse and worse. At that point, and it was only going to increase in an epic fashion. And it has. The same as our subscriber base. We've gotten 4,000 subscribers in the last 3 weeks. And that's not because there is not fantastic earth changes occurring. It's because there is. And people that are watching know. Now, the mainstream media is not covering any of this. And wait until you see what they're saying about it. It is disgusting. It is disinformation. And you'll get links to that lava fountain. Now, scientists say the rash of earthquakes and eruptions that are occurring now on the Earth are not connected. Nothing to do with each other. Now, this channel is specifically covering the events, and they are connected. But scientists say a rash of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on the Ring of Fire are not connected. And this is what the mainstream wants to pump down your throat so that you don't panic. But in a short period of time, there is going to be nothing but panic. So you should be planning now. Because they can only directly lie to the public for so long until the public wakes up. And with 4,000 subscribers in 3 weeks, I would say that a few people are waking up. Now let's talk about Georgia's secret volcanic range. They look like volcanoes, folks, and I shared this on several of my social media sources. But upon geologic investigation, this is a hoax. This is information that comes from These are sedimentary rock features. You can see the layering here. I'm a stratigrapher and a specialist in the field of sedimentary rocks. These are not volcanoes. These are sedimentary structures that someone labeled as volcanoes. And it all comes from a newspaper clipping in 1857 that hit the New York Times, which is also a hoax and fake news. That some idiot smelled a hot spring and felt an earthquake in that area and said that there were volcanoes. I'll let you do your own research, but it is 100% conclusively not a volcano. There's been no volcanic activity on the east coast of North America for at least 50 million years. The last orogeny was the Alleghenian orogeny around 200 million years ago, when the Atlantic Ocean began forming and we pulled away from Africa and the other continents. And that was the last major basaltic flow event, which formed all of the normal fault basins, the Triassic basins on the East Coast, where all the dinosaur fossils are on the East Coast. I've studied them extensively, and there has been no volcanic activity for tens of millions of years on the East Coast. So this is a hoax. Disregard. Earth's climate models underestimating warming of polar caps is also a hoax. And if you come down here and just read it, let us tear this apart. Scientists took to the Eocene, which is tens of millions of years ago, but recently, and they found out that CO2 was 560 parts per million. They also found out that there were ice caps. If there were ice caps back then, when CO2 was 100 parts per million higher than it is now, the temperature was also 8 degrees Celsius to 14 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than today. You can reveal the nonsense of the lie. It is not the hottest that it's ever been on Earth. Just recently, it was 14 degrees hotter and there were still ice caps during the Eocene, which was during a glacial period. So during glacial periods, it can be 14 degrees Fahrenheit hotter globally, and they can still be ice. And this is being revealed in the very article that says we're burning up. That is the disinformation you're getting. If you don't read through it and you don't have a background, you wouldn't know what they're saying. It's just blah, 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 blah. Yes, we're warming up. It was 14 degrees warmer just a few million years ago. And the CO2 was higher because this is the lowest CO2 has been for most of geologic history. You're being directly lied to and manipulated so that you become fodder for the masses. Let's talk about the reality. This is what happened on the East Coast in Jamestown. We are starved. We are starved. The 60 skeletal members of the English colony of Jamestown cried out in desperation as 2 ships arrived with provisions in June of 1610. This is after 180 of them died because of a grand solar minimum in 1610. Now, shortly after that, the sun picked up and Jamestown was settled in 1620. And that is the story of the Mayflower. But the people that came prior to that almost didn't make it back here, which is where we're headed in the Eddy minimum. The same place as 1610. I'll let you read this. They were the only ones left alive. They suffered from exhaustion, starvation, malnutrition, as well as from a strange sickness that caused all of the skins to peel off, from head to foot, as if they had been flayed. Zooarchaeological evidence shows that during this pitiless months of starving time, they turned to eating dogs, cats, rats, mice, venomous snakes, and other famine foods, mushrooms, toadstools, or whatever else we found growing upon the ground that would fill either mouth or belly. Now, some of the settlers reported ingested excrement and chewed the leather of their boots. Recent discoveries of human skeletons confirm the revelations of the colony's president, George Percy, that also reported cannibalism. Some adventurers to seek relief in the woods died as they sought it and were eaten by others who found them dead. While one man confessed under torture to having murdered and eaten his wife, Percy ordered his execution. Now, luckily, they were saved. And I'll let you read it, because that is the future. Coming from historical documents. It happened a mere 3 years after the first adventurous group of Englishmen arrived in Jamestown. From the beginning, it was a struggle for subsistence. Most of the settlers fell ill only weeks after landfall in May of 1607. The rest almost starved to death by 1610. But because the solar activity spiked, luckily, in 1610 and 11, Jamestown was settled and the New World was formed. And your slavery is a result of that spike in solar activity. And that is a truth boom. Guys, I hope you got something out of the video. Share this with like-minded people. Times are changing. We're reporting on it. You should start preparing. There's a lot you can do. Just start growing food. Learn about growing food. You can grow food in your garage, on your windowsill. It's about to get real up in here. Be safe, everybody.